right, guys, welcome again to another episode of the Crypto Sheikhs Podcast. I'm Anas. I'm here with my co-host Danosh. We have a really cool guest today, Mr. Alex Davies. He's with Tezos. We're really happy to have you here. Alex, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming, Alex.
This is the Crypto Sheikhs. This is the leading podcast in Dubai and the UAE, where you, regardless of your skill level, will learn everything from cryptocurrencies to blockchain technologies.
So, a lot of our audience has heard a lot about Ethereum, about Bitcoin, a lot of the sort of blue chip, so-called kind of cryptos at the moment. And I thought it'd be really interesting to have a discussion about Tezos because a lot is happening on the Tezos blockchain in terms of DeFi, NFTs. So, before we get to that, I think maybe it'd be best to hear a little bit about who you are and how you got into the crypto space and, why you decided to sort of end up at Tezos.
So I've always loved technology. And around 2011, 2012, I had read about Bitcoin. And to my demise of it a little bit, had not started mining and had rejoined the military. So I missed out a bit on crypto in the really early beginning days. And then when Bitcoin spiked up again in 2017, it popped back in my head and I was like, can I curse here? Is that a...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, holy shit, and then I started reading more and I just completely upended basically everything in my life. So I dove into the crypto space after, about 4 years ago. And eventually between working with different organizations and companies, started working with Tezos in about a year and a half ago.
Wonderful.
And so that was that was a amazing experience considering everything that's happening on proof of stake chains and yeah, so now
Just for the benefit of the audience, proof of stake, we'll define that when we talk about Tezos. It's a particular way of running a blockchain, but let's just hold that for when we talk about Tezos.
Sure. So yeah, and then noticing the scene and what's building on Tezos and what's not, I decided I founded Maverick Finance, which is a decentralized finance protocol on Tezos. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit as well. And so I find myself, deep in the Tezos world and decentralized finance and a bit of NFTs as well. So
that's wonderful. That's
awesome.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned about Tezos and what you're doing for them. So what are the big things that you guys are working on right now?
Well, actually, before we go into that, how would you define what Tezos is? What is its purpose and mission?
So Tezos has a different basically foundation, I would say, than most other blockchains that as they preach decentralization, they're not really decentralized. The foundations or the founders have this controlling not just social clout over the blockchain, but the actual power to roll back the blockchain and fork it if you could think of ETH and ETC, or actually just in a centralized manner shut down projects if you want to think about Binance Smart Chain, or Solana in a sense, and having a 24-hour outage and what they were able to do.
Yeah, very, very significant issues. So
without diving into what's wrong with other blockchains, Tezos is a decentralized commonwealth. Anybody can build on Tezos. We have over 400 different nodes that validate the transactions on Tezos. It truly is decentralized. Obviously, we have these powers at B in terms of the creator Arthur Brightman, who leads the direction of Tezos, who sits in the Tezos Foundation, who gives out grants from the fundraiser that was conducted in 2017, I believe. They raised $232 million. At that time, it was the highest fundraiser at all in crypto.
Wow.
It was surpassed by EOS later, but now the foundation, which is based in Switzerland, is in charge of has a $1.2 billion war chest.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Can you explain to some of our audience why Tezos is more decentralized than some of the other blockchains?
So, let's take EOS for example, where you have 21 block producers. It's a really small amount of people. There might be 21 and might not. That's not one centralized entity. And they have other block producers that can kind of like hot swap into replacing one of the 21, but that's only 21 at one time that are actually producing blocks. And if they really wanted to, they can have a cartel, so to say. On Tezos, there are, I think right now, actually just shy of 400. I think it was 390 when I checked the other day. What we call bakers, the node operators of Tezos, and it's diversified across the entire world. There's a node. There's a Tezos bakery on every continent except for Antarctica.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I actually stake my Tezos in a number of these steak and bakes places. It's amazing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's that yield aspect to Tezos, which because of its proof of stake nature. But before we go into that, I want to go back to something quite fundamental, which is Tezos is a type of world computer similar to Ethereum, right? So in many ways, it is an Ethereum killer, one of those so-called Ethereum killers out there that many people talk about. As Solana that you mentioned, we got EOS, which claimed to try and do the same thing. Cardano now also claims to be the potential future Ethereum killer. So maybe you could talk a little bit about why you think Tezos presents a better bet on the world computer, the smart contract chains, than Ethereum.
Well, then Ethereum, I thought it was funny that you mentioned Cardano. In order to kill ETH, you have to work.
Oh, God.
So, Charles, I'm sorry. You've got a great car, and I love Colorado. But so Tezos, well, to begin, there's a lot of different facets that make Tezos, in my opinion, the best blockchain to build on. It boils down to three things. I guess we can all label and we can hit each one. For starters, Tezos uses a liquid proof of stake mechanism rather than proof of work. So in a nutshell, we're 2 million times, or Tezos is 2 million times more efficient than proof of work.
Yeah. And it's really important to mention that because a proof of work blockchain, which is what Ethereum is still based on, it requires mining, it requires energy. Effectively, we've talked about this on the podcast before, proof of work involves effectively solving a very hard math problem, which, once you solve it using computers, loads of computers, which require lots of energy, you basically get the next block and you get rewarded in cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin, if it's BTC, proof of work blockchain, or Ethereum. So a lot of people have critiques of Ethereum because of its environmental issues, but Tezos being built as a proof of stake blockchain doesn't require that level of energy, right? Because you don't have to you don't need all those computers to solve a very complex math problem to get your Tezos. What you're really doing though is you're taking existing stores of the currency and you're staking it. And the way it becomes decentralized is not by miners around the world, it's by the holders of Tezos, with their cryptocurrency around the world, staking that on the blockchain. That's right.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, for everyone watching this, proof of work essentially has lots of computers and their computing power competing against one another. So it's one big race where everyone's burning electricity in order to compete with one another to win and then validate the block to make sure the transactions are valid and
yeah, and
I was about to say something and I just realized not to say it.
So they go through.
So valid, so they go through. So essentially, with proof of stake, there's other proof of stake chains. Don't get me wrong. There's a couple more things that make Tezos unique, but instead of wasting energy competing with one another, a proof of stake network essentially takes a security deposit. Tezos bakers, as we call them, the nodes that operate the blockchain, it originated in France, so there's a lot of French nomenclature. That you bake rolls of coins. So there's a lot of bread references, rolls, really cool. Ovens references.
They have croissants as well.
There are some logos in the Tezos world of croissants. Yeah. A lot of the bakers like bacon. I think Bacon Rolls actually, if I'm not mistaken, has a croissant as their logo.
And what's great about this when you're baking is you're getting a yield, right?
Yeah. So instead of wasting electricity, burning electricity to compete with one another, a Tezos node, like a miner, essentially just locks in your coins as a security deposit, and in case there's malicious behavior, then it slashes your security deposit, kind of like if you put up a deposit at a hotel and if you break the wall, then they slash you. The hotel doesn't just keep your deposit. And that's what proof of work really does, is everyone pays their deposit. And in case you misbehave, you just don't get rewarded. So then you lose your deposit anyways. So it's extraordinarily more efficient than proof of work.
And the yield's like 6%, right? Or something.
Yeah. So the protocol, inflation is not a bad thing. Everyone's talking about inflation right now and it is horrible in what's going on today in terms of the economy, but regulated inflation is good. Everybody always wants to have a little bit more money at the end of the day. It allows for expansion of the economy. And so the Tezos blockchain functions to produce 5.5% APR every year. And you get that if you delegate or stake your tokens.
Correct.
There's a roughly 79% delegation rate today. So that 5.5% is being distributed to 79% of the people who are delegating their tokens. And so the yield is actually closer to 5.8% today.
Yeah, brilliant.
Because it's split between less people. Why the other 21% are not, go figure. It's simple. It takes 2 seconds.
So for the benefit of the audience, staking is actually really easy now. I've staked my Tezos on Kraken. I've also staked it on a number of other kind of exchanges, but also even better now, I've actually been able to stake it directly from my ledger, which I love because it's the most perfect personal banking that you can have. And so you basically have your Tezos on a ledger, and you can then, through the ledger on a given sort of website, delegate it to a delegation, or is it?
You delegate it to a bakery.
Yeah, bakery.
It's called a bakery. Yeah,
bakery. Yeah, and they basically take your Tezos and
they take the voting rights for your Tezos. Yeah, they never have the ability to move your coins.
Yes.
To spend your coins. They only get the voting weight and vote and validate transactions on your behalf.
Thanks for correcting me on that.
Yeah, your coins are never at risk.
No, your coins never actually leave your wallet. They're still there. Yeah. They take the voting rights, and in exchange for paying a small fee, you might pay them like, I don't know,
5 to 15%, depending
like
on the
that.
bakery.
They still give you your annual yield of 6%, which is wonderful. And in a way, you could also say that this yield acts as an incentive for more people to come into the blockchain and keep it even more decentralized, right? If there are a lot of people out here who see this yield, a lot more people entering the Tezos kind of ecosystem means more decentralization.
100%. I mean, we run one bakery. We're in the process of setting up 2 more for Maverick Finance. We're actually setting one up to be controlled by the DAO. We'll explain everything, but and then another one for the software development company behind the protocol itself. They're really easy to set up, and believe it or not, we're running it on a Raspberry Pi, this little tiny, really microcomputer. I mean, the computer itself costs $100. The hard drive costs $100. For $200, you have a whole setup.
That's pretty awesome.
And you don't need, to connect your mining facility to a nuclear power plant as they're doing in Russia right now in Siberia. So really just this little tiny computer can run an entire node.
Wow. That's the beauty.
So let's say I would be a private baker. I buy a Raspberry Pi, and can I get connected to the Tezos blockchain?
Anybody can start a bakery. There's no authorization needed from anybody. Like I said, we're a decentralized commonwealth, and you just need 8,000 Tezos to start a bakery. And
which is about how much now? So Tezos
roughly $48,000 at the moment.
$48,000. Yeah. So the Tezos price right now is around
about $6.
$6.
Yeah, $6.20 I think right before we started.
I think.
Actually, this brings me to another point. So a friend of mine, when he heard about you coming on the podcast, he was like, "So Tezos hasn't really performed like the other coins this year." And, maybe there's a question mark there. And I'm curious as well because of all the different projects being built on Inkling NFTs. Okay, Tezos is up like 200%, which is a lot in the grand scheme of things. But why do you think it hasn't seen the same amount of growth as some of these other Ethereum killers like Cardano, Solana? These have gone up like 1,000%.
Shiba Inu is also supposedly an Ethereum killer.
No, it's not. But just curious as to what do you think? So, I know. Maybe Tezos is not a pump and dump.
I've had to deal with this question so many times. Don't worry. I know exactly what you mean. I get DM'd this in my inbox all the time, unfortunately.
You get hate messages. Why is it only up 10% in the last 6 months?
Almost, yeah. So, look, Tezos, as you said, Tezos is not a pump and dump blockchain. it's built for the long term, and it'll be here in 20 or 30 years. With the foundation has been doing a great job with distributing grants in terms of building infrastructure, building startups, and now getting the marketing machine up and running. And that's the biggest difference, I think, is that what people don't understand is that everyone's always chasing the next big rise,
that's that moon.
Yeah, and so Tezos has been, great things take time to build, and decentralization does have its downsides where it takes a little bit, to get the ball rolling. It starts off quite, smaller, and then eventually tumbles into this giant avalanche. And so it's been a little bit of a slower start for Tezos.
What you could
but
argue,
it's been expanding like crazy now.
So what I'm thinking as well, though, is that another way to look at the performance of Tezos is that it's been quite stable. So as far as cryptos go, people talk about volatility. Having exposure to Tezos, if you have your yield of 6% per year, you're making a very steady 6% without much worry about huge downside risks, right?
It's if you're thinking about investing in terms of hype over fundamentals, Tezos has all the fundamentals in terms of having that layer one protocol that will be there for the next 20 or 30 years. And so I mentioned Tezos' liquid proof of stake of being one of the great reasons of Tezos, reasons for Tezos being one of the best blockchain out there. But it also has on-chain governance, so the stakeholders actually decide what upgrades we want or not. And so we have no hard forks. And we also, I'll keep this one like super simple because it gets a bit technical, but Tezos is built with a type of computer programming called functional computer programming, and it allows for something called formal verification. And it's the type of computer code that's used for nuclear power plants and military and aerospace.
Wow.
It's extremely secure, and it allows you to test your code before deploying it. And so we've seen dramatically less amount of attacks on Ethereum than Ethereum, less mistakes. And if you're going to build infrastructure, banking infrastructure, DeFi, even NFTs with the prices that they're at today, you would want to have the most secure code out there.
100%.
So those three factors have given Tezos this amazing fundamental aspect that you were talking about, especially when it comes to the fact that we can literally roll out an upgrade every 3 months. And as Arthur Brightman, the founder of Tezos, has said, every other blockchain is our testnet.
That's really cool. So looking at Tezos, if we look at it from the marketing mix point of view, where you have the product, you guys have really been focusing on building a solid product. Some people are even saying that Tezos is the state-of-the-art blockchain technology, and it will be so even in the future. While Ethereum is really struggling, and even with their Ethereum 2.0, they're also struggling. But Tezos on their first layer is going to be state-of-the-art even in the future. So I think you guys have nailed your product. In terms of your promotion, I know that you're doing some collaborations. You're doing partnerships with Red Bull, McLaren, big brands. How do you think that's gonna impact the Tezos valuation moving down? Do you have a forecast? Can you give some alpha to our listeners?
Oh God, price forecast.
Some people are saying it's going to pump 9,000%. These are all hypers. I shouldn't listen to them. But I do believe personally that Tezos is significantly undervalued.
Yeah,
and it has a lot of upside potential. But if you would look into your the glass ball, and forecast the next 12 months, where do you see Tezos go?
So I don't think I'll give a price on air, but we can talk about multiples and numbers. Just for example, if Tezos right now has a market cap of roughly $5 billion. Don't quote me on the exact second year. I'm not sitting in front of Binance, but roughly $5 billion. And Cardano, for example, which has dramatically less of a built-up ecosystem compared to Tezos, is trading at almost a 20x market cap from here. So if you want to, I think it's, a couple days ago, I think it was a fully diluted $90 billion valuation. So that's quite close to a 20x market cap.
Correct.
And, or 20x higher market cap. And that would put Tezos at, $120 a token or so. But That's not it's not trading, it's
worry,
not financial advice, but
Yeah.
if you would do the research and look at other competing platforms, Ethereum is 100x above Tezos. And you look at what's building on Tezos with, McLaren Racing released their NFT experience. Everything's sold out already. It's not just a sponsorship with McLaren and Red Bull Racing. They're building their NFT fan experiences on Tezos.
Yeah,
and now McLaren is sold out in like, I think it was a day.
Wow.
We also need to highlight a very critical point, which is Tezos could stand to take market share away from Ethereum for one primary reason. Let's not beat around the bush about Ethereum gas fees, okay? Every day I read about this on my Twitter, and there's another person trying to, who's come out of a gas war, paying thousands and thousands of dollars just to make a single transaction. What are the gas fees experience on Tezos? What's it like transacting on Tezos?
I don't think I've paid more than a penny or two. I mean, I've played around with the Tron ecosystem quite a bunch, and I've noticed the gas fees go up there, and even Tezos is still cheaper than that. When it comes to DeFi or NFTs, really, I mean, it's been it's a joke, really. You could launch NFTs for $1 on Tezos.
That's incredible.
You can airdrop NFTs to your users for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
So I mean, just for the if you'd say take one NFT transaction for a penny and compare that to one NFT transaction on OpenSea on Ethereum at $200, think about the tens of thousands of transactions that you can do there.
So you mentioned you compared Tezos with Cardano before, and Cardano being valued at 20 times more than Tezos. What would you say Cardano has done well to achieve the position they're at today, and what is required for Tezos to beat them?
The one thing I think that Cardano's done better than Tezos, let's say, is marketing, and also the fact that they haven't released. No, it really reminds me of Silicon Valley, where they're talking. Have you guys seen the TV show?
I've seen it.
Okay,
It's really
so
good.
it's one of my favorite shows in the world. But Ross Hanneman, the eccentric, crazy billionaire, he basically told him, like, no, never produce a profit.
Yeah.
Never go live. Like, if you make a profit, everyone wants to know how much you made.
Correct.
And how much more you're going to make next.
In fact, VCs, I think, famously don't want to invest in profitable companies. I see these tweets, these meme tweets all the time. Like, if it's profitable, red flag.
Yeah, but they're not investing enough in R&D. That's
So. Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of that. It's not an anti-Cardano thing. I personally have hope that Cardano launches well and it builds out an ecosystem. To me, a rising tide raises all ships. So the happier, the better that Cardano and Solana and Tron and all these other layer ones do, the happier I am. Yeah. I think it'll also raise Tezos up as well. However, marketing has been a big one, and Tezos has made a big shift and focus into marketing in past several months, and it's starting to pay off really with Red Bull, McLaren, Ubisoft, the massive gaming companies building an NFT experience on Tezos. It's really growing into these these big partnerships and institutional collaborations. Not just, hey, take my money and put throw our logo on the side, but it's a technical partner, and that's really the foundational.
So this takes
value.
me to the next point now, because we've covered a lot of the key things around Tezos. Let's talk about DeFi. So who's building on Tezos, and maybe one thing we could also talk about: does Tezos use the same kind of smart contract language as Ethereum? Because I know Ethereum is built on Solidity. I'm guessing Tezos is built on Rust, right?
No, because it's formal. Functional programming, it's not Solidity or Rust.
Oh,
we have different essentially languages that will compile into Michelson.
Okay.
And so essentially developers can use something called SmartPy, which is a form of Python essentially to develop on Tezos. There's the different languages of Lego that are used to develop on Tezos. We're personally using Lego for Maverick. And also a new one called Pymish from Pirates Labs.
So a number of different languages.
There's a whole host of different languages that will compile to use on Tezos, but Solidity is not one of them.
So what's, on Ethereum, one of the biggest things that got people really hyped up last year, DeFi summer, was, Compound, Aave, these big players, people moving their money in there, earning interest.
Chasing yield.
Yeah. Then we had the yield farming sort of boom that happened. I mean, I was in it as well. There was Uniswap. It was crazy, right? It was July 2020. So are we seeing some of that now on Tezos? Are we seeing these yield farms being built, these DeFi protocols, and people moving their money in there? They're taking loans, etc.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Uniswap because they were forced to get into this. I mean, SushiSwap forked them and then basically Vampire attacked them. And then even their own coin was forced forward. Someone deployed the smart contract for them, actually, with Uniswap, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Someone paid this ridiculous gas fee and actually deployed their token before they had wanted to.
Oh, wow.
I think that's what happened. So it's starting to grow on Tezos now. It took a little bit longer. There's a couple DeFi platforms that are around, like Plenty and Colibri and Uves, if to pronounce that correctly, to help the Swedes, or the Swiss, I think they're from. But and we're building Maverick Finance, which is Maverick is really this all-encompassing banking platform on Tezos, where MakerDAO does algorithmic stablecoins, and Aave and Compound do peer-to-peer in their own ways, and Curve does stablecoin exchange. So we took a look at all the different facets of what makes DeFi so great on Ethereum in general, and we wanted to build this like more user-friendly, more accessible form of a banking ecosystem, not just a one-use product. And we had like any startup we had this idea of we're going to do this, and then we ended up over here much better. But essentially, Maverick allows it's a cooperatively run bank. It's
awesome.
It's a DAO.
Oh, it's a DAO. So DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, just for the audience. And this is a type of new sort of company or organization that's actually built on the blockchain. Quite interesting. I think we're going to do a separate session on DAOs.
We're going to do a separate session about DAOs.
But let's keep that in your back, and we'll talk about this separately. But keep going.
So a DAO's sort of, just to give a TLDR on it, a DAO is basically like a cooperatively run company. The people that interact and use the services of said company own the company. And so once we deploy Maverick, we won't control it. The stakeholders of the Maverick token control everything from what types of collateral do we use and accept, what type of yield farms do we have, what else would they control? Our treasury is on chain, so even the company building Maverick, it's called Tezos Dynamics, but we're kind of keeping in the background, but we don't control the treasury. All of the earnings flow into an on-chain treasury.
Amazing.
And the DAO, the users and the stakeholders of MVK control the deployment of funds from this lending platform.
So to the audience, if, for example, I would own the Maverick tokens, then there's a voting about certain decisions within the company, and I have, depending on how many tokens I own, a certain
that's your voting weight.
Yeah. Uniswap has some of these features as well.
Yeah, and so we also use the same governance model as Tezos. So the stakeholder doesn't vote himself. He would, as we've seen with MakerDAO, they couldn't pass certain protocol updates because not enough people came to turn up. Everybody wants to own the ability to vote.
But they don't turn up.
Yeah, exactly. So all a user needs to do essentially on Maverick is stake their tokens into the system and delegate their voting rights to a node. We call them satellites. We have a retro-futuristic theme. And the satellite will vote on your behalf. They can't use your tokens, spend your tokens. And as the satellite earns for voting, we take money from the treasury and incentivize voting. And also the satellites, a little bit like Chainlink, they sign the price feeds for an oracle. Wow. So the satellites do kind of like this they operate the system.
So guys, oracles, just so you know what that is. Chainlink is a type of oracle. So when you have a smart contract on any kind of protocol, you need information to feed into that smart contract in order to determine, for example, a loan, right? In order for you to execute a loan on a smart contract, you need something to detect data elsewhere, and that determines whether this loan can go through. That data could be the price. It could be other factors. It could be movement. It could be sending of anything can be used as data. But that instrument which detects the data is called an oracle. And so you were just talking about a certain type of oracle being deployed, like Chainlink, to determine some of these decisions on the smart contract.
Yeah. So this off-chain data that it's not in the smart contract itself, needs to be fed into the smart contract.
Yes.
And we, instead of using a centralized oracle, meaning one person has control over, let's say, giving the smart contract the price of the collateral, which could lead to a bunch of different attacks. They could lie. A centralized oracle provider can lie and say, you know what, Bitcoin's not 60,000. Bitcoin is now worth $1 million, and then take out a larger loan than they should. Or they could say Bitcoin is $1 and essentially drain all the funds from a loan.
This is very important. That's why oracles are very important to any kind of smart contract. This is in fact how a lot of hacks happen. People manage to hack the oracle and manipulate the oracle. So the oracle feeds incorrect information into that smart contract, leading to that smart contract either being executed incorrectly so that funds are drained or
minted.
Minted.
Yeah.
So the point here is, this is where we have audits. You have to see and make sure that your smart contract is adequately audited to ensure that you don't have these kind of problems.
Yeah, so we're talking to a few auditors about actually, reviewing the code when the time comes. But so those satellites in Maverick are essentially they're the curators of the platform. They vote on behalf of the users. They pay out to users. They sign the price feeds so that everything stays safe in the system. So a lot in Maverick revolves around these node operators, and all the user has to do is essentially own his tokens, stake them, and he'll earn automatically, and we'll be able to utilize his votes automatically. And if you don't like the way that your satellite votes, the same way like Tezos, you just redelegate with no cost.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So to our listeners, is if someone wants to invest, let's say, in Maverick Finance because they believe in you and what you're doing for the Tezos ecosystem, is there a way to invest in it right now?
Hunt me down, honestly. Thankfully, I've been hounded in the past in the past several weeks, especially as we started pushing it more. We're going to have a public token sale that it's very uniquely different than most token sales. We're not using the proceeds for operations. Yeah, we're doing a private round that is for operational capacity. Developers need to get paid, marketing needs to get paid. The public sale proceeds are actually going to be used as liquidity for our token on a DEX. So
a decentralized exchange.
Yes, sorry. So
a DEX, so we have two different types of exchanges in this world. The first type is the ones that you guys are very familiar with. Binance, Kraken. These are centralized exchanges. What does that mean? It means that this exchange exists and is controlled by one entity, and you give money to them, coins or whatever, fiat, and they do the exchange on the books themselves. Now, decentralized exchange is one of the biggest innovations that came through last year through DeFi Summer, where you have smart contracts independently creating liquidity. So you can buy a coin in a sort of peer-to-peer manner with somebody else without the need to depend on one sort of centralized institution like Binance. This is important because when you put your money on Binance, you're taking third-party sort of risks here. If Binance collapses, your money sort of disappears with Binance.
It happened to me actually with Cryptopia. Yeah, I was. I think it was a New Zealand or Australian-based exchange, and
the one that the guys that ran off.
I think they got hacked.
Yeah, they got hacked.
They got hacked, and I've got coins there that are just, technically Grant Thornton is going through it and trying to figure out who owns what, but. It was a centralized exchange, got hacked, and now I have zero access to any of my funds that were there.
This is the beauty about decentralized finance. DeFi solves so many problems that the centralized world just could not really address. Yeah. Centralization creates so many problems for many people because you have to depend on one entity. With DeFi, you're removing the trust that you need to put on one entity, and you're distributing that trust across a number of different people who are participating in that sort of decentralized ecosystem.
Which is also one of the reasons why we believe in Tezos, because Tezos, in its nature, is a very decentralized blockchain compared to the others.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting. We are more decentralized than virtually any other blockchain. I think it's interesting you use the word trust because I really actually don't like the word trustless because you still have to trust that smart contract. Your average user,
yes,
no one doesn't actually read the code.
Correct. So when we say trustless, we're meaning decentralized trust. This is an important term that we use in crypto, and a lot of white papers they cite we are so trustless, and then blah, blah, blah. and
then the founder runs off with your money.
The thing is, yes, what you're trusting, you don't need to trust one person. But the trustlessness comes from the smart contract.
Open source code.
Open source code. So a protocol is only as trustless as its code. So assuming that smart contract is, without any defects, it's been audited, you can trust it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's way more trusted than some random no-name bank or, let's say, anonymous founders and non-open source code. Those are major red flags. You want to talk about like trading tips? Be careful where you put your money. But
all right, cool. So just as we wrap this up, I think before we end, I want to just touch on NFTs because Danosh and I are very big in the NFT space. We've got our company Arts DAO, which is sort of growing in the NFT space, and one of the things that actually we were interested in talking about is whether we should be thinking about doing some of our NFT work on the Tezos blockchain.
Why not all?
Oh, that's why we have you here to discuss this. So, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what's happening in the NFT space within Tezos.
Do we have enough time?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's so much happening in the NFT space on Tezos. There's several NFT platforms on Tezos that have skyrocketed. There's Hen, there's Calamint. I know of a Tezos chapter that is actually incubating a curated NFT platform. We are, and that will be coming out soon. We'll be making announcements pretty quickly about that. But it's a curated platform, so it's
foundation.
Yeah, it's not as decentralized, I would say, in that sense, because we do limit who goes on there, but we also make sure that there's no it's for celebrities and artists and singers to come on board.
Is it a bit more like Nifty Gateway in a sense where is it invite only?
It's more so invite only, and we're also going to real art galleries to onboard them to digitize their collections, not just digital artists who want to create NFTs, but real life artists who want to turn their real life art into NFTs and then, let's say, sell them as lithographs of a physical model. And so, for example, Hen on Tezos.
Hen is famous on Tezos for being one of the top sort of marketplaces, kind of like the OpenSea in a way on Tezos.
A bit. They actually overtook OpenSea shortly with more transaction volume, not market cap of those transactions, but just more simply transactions than OpenSea for a while. And that's because you're looking at transaction fees of 1 penny.
1 penny, exactly.
Any artist can go put something there for $50 or $100 instead of just $200 being your transaction cost.
Yeah, usually when I buy an NFT, I pay $70 up to $100, but which is
on the NFT or the transaction?
on the transaction, on the gas fee.
I paid $1,000 for my CyberCon,
which is absolutely insane. And that depends on the time of the day, and some days it's just through the roof, like an asset, $1,000. So on Tezos, it obviously makes a lot more sense.
Way more sense, yeah.
But the NFT community hasn't grown as much on the Tezos blockchain yet, and I think that will change over the next few months and even the next 1 year. I think it's gonna, they've done a few good projects like the Tezos, etc. And I think that now is the time for Tezos to really shine.
Yeah, and it's happening. If you look at, from a technical standpoint, if you look at the amount of contract calls on Tezos, that's the amount of times people have interacted with a smart contract and the blockchain. Every month you see it beat the previous month's record, and it's just this exponential growth of NFTs. So we're literally living in it right now.
Would you say you're taking market share from OpenSea and the other Ethereum-based platforms?
Difficult to answer that.
It's difficult to answer. Yeah. If market share is being taken from there, I don't know exactly if that's where it's coming from. Yeah. But it is growing. But I think one of the most important things is, like you said, you're spending $70 to $100 just on transaction fee costs.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if you wanted to go to dinner and just to get in, they said, hey, we're going to charge you $200 and then you can buy our products.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So it's made it unbearable for artists to actually produce their work and release it to the public. But bigger than that, because Tezos is so ecologically friendly, artists, are really big on being green and careful about their environment and their surroundings.
This is such an important point. One of the artists that we've been speaking to, he's a photographer. He's actually told me that many people in the photography community hate Ethereum and they hate crypto because of its environmental issues. And, photographers, especially landscape photographers, are very, very environmentally sort of conscious. So one of the stigmas that they face when they tell people that, oh, we're now going to be NFTing our photography is they say, well, you're
NFTs are dirty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what I love about what you're saying here is that NFTs don't have to be dirty, right? They can be clean with the right blockchain.
Well, unless they're like kinky NFTs, but But
All right.
we have a hashtag called Green NFTs, and so it's extraordinarily, like I said, we're 2 million times more efficient than proof of work.
Awesome. All right, wrapping this up now. We've just because we're hitting on time. What we like to do when we wrap up our interview is we always like to ask a couple rapid fire questions just so the audience can get to know you a little bit more. So if I were to say, so what do you have any hidden talents beyond your sort of maverickness in crypto?
Ooh. I play ice hockey.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. I used to play professionally for a short bit, not in the NHL, somewhere overseas. That changed recently. Now I just play beer leagues.
Did you ever get into a fight in the ice hockey ring?
I have.
I love it.
I would love to see that.
Of course, Darius would love to see it because he used to be a fighter himself.
It wasn't as pretty. I broke my pinky. It was a pretty bad fight, but
at least you didn't break your chin.
no. But I've got a concussion before, and I've almost snapped my ankle, and that was actually in the last game of the professional season. So I just figured maybe it's better to play more like with an older, more fun crowd, especially as work's picked up.
I actually think there's much more injuries in ice hockey than in Thai boxing.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And we have tons of pads too, so it's not so bad. It's not so bad.
So if you didn't do crypto, what would you be doing?
Great question. I've always been fascinated with tech, so hopefully somewhere in there. I was in security and strategy intelligence before crypto. Crypto.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be somehow in crypto.
Okay,
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity or something. Okay.
Yeah.
And now that you're here in Dubai, have you found your favorite restaurant in Dubai?
So I'm a big fan of. We went there the other night. Three Fills.
Oh, I don't
The
know what
like
that is.
sushi, like Asian sort of.
Where is it?
Oh, that's a good question. It's right near. I was about to say some sort of marina, but everything here is marinas. It's kind of right near the Jumeirah Beach near the Bulgari resorts.
Okay, cool.
And Tortuga.
Tortuga, the Mexican restaurant in Jumeirah.
That's really sick.
Yeah, I think I'll be going there tonight, actually.
Nice.
Alex, it's been such a pleasure having you here. I learned a lot from this interview, and I'm looking forward to testing out Maverick Finance when you launch. Keep us updated. We definitely want to be part, and we definitely want to participate.
Let us know how we can invest.
Personally, I love Tezos. I've had Tezos for a long time. I'm patient with it, and so I'm looking forward to seeing where Tezos goes. And I'm sure the audience, definitely excited about that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't own any Tezos. I'm, but I actually now after this,
all I can say is divune.
So that means stupid in Persian or crazy. So actually now I'm gonna probably do a fair share and research into it. No, I don't need to do any research. After this, I feel very confident in investing in Tezos.
Well, especially you don't want to buy into something when it's already at a $90 billion market cap. Like Solana was a great buy at 50 cents, but at 200, it's different. So Danosh, Anas, thank you guys for having me. I can't wait to be back in Dubai again, and I'll obviously see you guys. So.
Great having you, Alex.
Take it easy, guys. Thank you for joining us on the Crypto Sheikhs Podcast. Everyone. Until the next time, see ya.